Welcome to the Scaleup Valley podcast, where we bring the best of the best to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's episode is a special one, is part of the Asian edition, where we are covering scale-ups and startups from Southeast Asia with my co-founder and co-host, Andrew Wong. Andrew, welcome back
Hi,
to the
thank you.
show.
Thank you for having me here again. I think we covered the Philippines, we covered Singapore, we almost covered Malaysia, and now we are covering, Thailand. So I think it's everything is probably moving fine right now. So congratulations for your X number of episodes.
Absolutely. Thanks for being with me in this. And today's guest is a special one. His name is Wilfried, the CEO of Zaapi. Wilfried, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So let's get to know more about you and how did you end starting up Zaapi?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess, quick background about myself, right, and how I came to be where I am today. So I've been into startups for a number of years, right? I'm from France, but I actually grew up in Asia. I lived in mainland China for a number of years. That's really why I started to work in startups, and it got me hooked very fast. I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So fast forward, actually not that long time, because I guess I was quite early in relative terms in really getting out there and getting started. I built my first company in between Beijing and Hong Kong. That was a direct-to-consumer brand. It still continues to this day, but it's more of a lifestyle, side business today. And in light of the experience of kind of building that up, right, I decided that I really wanted to focus my attention on something that had huge potential for scale. And that's what brought me, from Beijing to then Hong Kong to then, Singapore to start what is now Zaapi. So Zaapi is the product of about, a year of first, ideation, trying to understand the markets in Southeast Asia, the customers, the opportunities, and so on and so forth. And strong from that understanding, deciding to focus on this particular opportunity of e-commerce enablement for small businesses within the broader context of the digitalization of MSMEs, which is possibly one of the biggest trends that we have today in Southeast Asia in terms of sheer dollar opportunity.
I love it. And we also had what I call a professional entrepreneur, Benoit from Payflow, who is based in Barcelona and expanding across Latam, which is also backed by Flash Ventures. And we discussed it a lot, also the process of spending time or investing time in the process of ideation and really ensuring that we are picking a great idea and a great opportunity before starting up. And I think this is less common in the past, and we are seeing more and more of this happening, maybe also because of this kind of pre-seed investors being much more founder friendly and much more helpful. By the way, what for the ones who are considering a move and might be also as you in the past, leading a lifestyle business and want to go into an opportunity that has more potential to scale more aggressively, and are seeing also the rounds being raised in the main media portals and so on. So what has been your experience moving and considering options before deciding into Flash Ventures and into this opportunity?
Yeah. So I guess I separate two things, right? One is deciding to start a venture-backed business as opposed to a lifestyle business, and the other one is deciding on Flash Ventures as opposed to other options of starting a venture-backed business, right? So on the first one, I'd say when you're making the decision of starting a venture-backed business, make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons, and make sure that you understand what it is that you're getting into, right? So I think especially in markets that have had less exposure to venture, be it for instance in Africa, right? I hear from some friends who are active in the venture scene in say Morocco, right? That the biggest kind of problem that they face is that entrepreneurs are coming to them with small business ideas, lifestyle business ideas, not venture ideas, right? So you've got to be very clear that, not all business ideas are venture backable businesses, which doesn't mean, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? You can, get a great lifestyle out of starting a very successful lifestyle business, right? But if you want to start a venture backable business, then the scope of ideas that you can execute on narrows hugely all of a sudden, right? There are not that many ideas that can scale to, $1 billion, $10 billion or more, right? So you've got to be very intentional about what it is that you decide to pursue, and also be cognizant of the fact that it's going to be a very different, sort of experience of starting a business. One where, you're going to possibly live and die, likely by fundraising rounds. It's going to be very fast paced. It's really, go big or go home, right? At every step of the journey, you're banking that, a lot of assumptions are going to turn out to be true. And if they do, indeed, you're going to be able to, hyper grow. But if they don't, you will hyper blow up. Right. So you do need to be quite risk loving if you're deciding to take this path. So that's on the first question. On the latter, right, which is Flash Ventures versus other investors. So what I say always with people who ask me these questions of why Flash Ventures versus other investors, right? I think so. Let me first put up a disclaimer, which is that Flash Ventures are great investors. I feel very fortunate to have them and to have GFC on our cap table. They've been nothing but the best partners so far in the journey. So really couldn't wish for any better investors, right? But when it comes to considering one's options, by definition, it is very much dependent on what your options are. If you're a third-time star entrepreneur with a couple of unicorns under your belt, your options are going to look very different than a first-time entrepreneur with not that much credibility and not that many connections in the space, right? And so if you're in that kind of position, perhaps like a quote-unquote talent investor, like an Entrepreneur First or an Antler might make some sense for you. Perhaps a Flash Ventures, which who are more comfortable taking bets on the kind of people who are early in their entrepreneurship journey might be a better fit. But again, those options are going to look different depending on where you're at and what your profile is.
Got it. Great structure of the question, and thanks for separating both subjects. And let's get to know also a little bit more about Zaapi. So explain us a little bit more the product, the ICP, how is it evolving, the long-term vision.
So starting from the beginning, right? Zaapi was really born out of the realization that there are two massive trends in Southeast Asia that are currently coalescing to create an enormous opportunity, namely the digitalization of small businesses. Small businesses in Southeast Asia, or rather the population of Southeast Asia, has gone from about 30% internet and digital penetration in 2015 to about 80% today, right? In a region of 600 million plus people. The small business segment very much mirrors this. So that's trend number one, access. Trend number two is incentive. In just the last 2.5 years, small businesses have gone from being extremely resistant to change and resistant to digitalization to having no choice but to adopt new digital tools and new digital processes, right? And as a result of that, we're seeing now the small business segment, which represents 50% of the Southeast Asian economy, moving online in a massive wave. And so that's really the opportunity that we're going after. In the coming years, we can expect that from about 20% of small businesses that today use digital tools for business in Southeast Asia region, we're going to have the large majority of them using digital tools, right? And we're talking about a $2 trillion economy here by 2025 with about 130 million businesses, right? So our aim at Zaapi is to provide these small businesses with the tools that currently don't exist or are very limited for them to move online. And that starts with e-commerce enablement as a use case. So why e-commerce enablement? If you look further afield in all regions around the world that are more advanced than Southeast Asia when it comes to e-commerce, you've got this duality of marketplaces on the one hand and of e-commerce enablers on the other. So for instance, you've got the Amazon, Shopify duality. You've got the Taobao in China Waymob duality, $30 billion company, Waymob. You've got Rakuten based in Japan. You've got Mercado Libre and Nuvem Shop in Latin America. But Southeast Asia stands out by not having a big player or a leading player in the e-commerce enablement category for now. And indeed, you typically see about a decade of gap between the emergence of these large marketplaces and these large e-commerce enablers. In Southeast Asia, it's been bang on 10 years since the emergence of the largest, earliest marketplace, Lazada, 2012, right? So right now is exactly the time to be expecting this type of business to emerge in the region, and that's what we're aiming to do. But strong from developing a first use case, e-commerce enablement, we plan to very much move into adjacent verticals and ultimately provide the full suite of digital tools that small businesses need to operate their businesses, be it for selling, for buying, for financing themselves.
Got it. Super clear and super well structured. Again, Wilfried. And in terms of expansion, I know that you have chosen Thailand to start. So why Thailand and not a typical route into Indonesia or the Philippines, given the size of the markets?
Yeah. No. So very, very relevant question, right? Now, when it comes to Southeast Asia, the typical entry points are certainly Indonesia, number one. I guess the metaphor that people use is that Indonesia is the king, Vietnam is the queen, and Philippines is the jack, right? And Thailand is not even in that triad. So why target Thailand? Let me explain that a little bit. So this question of why Thailand is really linked to why not Indonesia, right? So we can't look at one without the other. So firstly, Indonesia is the largest e-commerce market in Southeast Asia by pure GMV numbers. But actually that headline number belies the underlying opportunity. Because if you're looking at the portion of addressable GMV, i.e. for us, that means social commerce GMV that is currently not processed through marketplaces, right? And that we can therefore capture, we can scale monetization based on our take rate. It's only about 25% of the total e-commerce pie in Indonesia. If we look at Thailand, Vietnam, and Philippines, it's more than 50%, right? So immediately in relative terms, the opportunity for us is twice as large in these three markets outside of Indonesia. Now, when you add to that the fact that Indonesia is the market that attracts the most attention and therefore the most competitors, right? Then we get to a picture where essentially, we have three markets adjacent to Indonesia, which by 2025, so first they are the fastest growing in Southeast Asia, about 30% CAGR versus about 17% for Indonesia. By 2025, they'll be twice as large in terms of raw e-commerce GMV as Indonesia, and they'll have 4 times as much social commerce GMV. In addition to that, they're the least competitive, right? So our rationale goes that first we target Thailand as part of these three markets, and as the market that is the second largest e-commerce market in Southeast Asia, and also the wealthiest amongst these 4 countries, about twice the GDP per capita. And strong from there, we start a regional expansion.
Got it. And by the way, in terms of order, do you already have in mind what will be the order of that expansion, or at the moment?
So, yeah, so we've got some ideas around that, but we'll let people track our growth and see where it is that we go from here.
But you're very brave to go into a market where language is very different from our native language, which is English, right? So in the Thai, you have Thai language and also the Thai Sanskrit. So how do you mitigate all these challenges, right? We go into a foreign market that is totally different from the traditional market.
Right. So at the end of the day, if you're going to build a regional company, you're never going to speak the languages of all these countries that you're operating in, right? And in the same way as I supplement as a founder, my skills, which are very specific, with skills that are complementary to mine, be it on the technical side, on the commercial side, and what have you. I do supplement my lack of knowledge of the language and so on and so forth by some people who have that, right? So from the beginning, we've had a very strong team in Thailand. We've got a strong leadership. We've got some very strong individual contributors that have made it possible to localize every aspect of our approach in Thailand. So it actually has not been as difficult as one might think. supported by the right people, everything is possible.
Yeah. Another question is, I mean, I noticed that you're doing e-commerce on the mobile, right? How do you define your key, competitive advantage? Because as you know, in all ASEAN or Southeast Asian countries, they have their own solution. And you coming from another place and putting it, competing with existing solution, there must be something very special about your product. So could you share with us?
Yeah, correct.
How you're different, For
sure. So broadly, we see three categories of three layers of competition in the Southeast Asia region. So in the e-commerce enablement space, you've got your first layer, which is occupied by the large global players, right? So like your Shopify, your WooCommerces, and so on and so forth. Now, these players are not really relevant to the Southeast Asia region because they lack a tremendous amount of localization. They don't accept local, or they don't integrate with local payment gateways, local logistics players. They are desktop first as being supposed to be mobile first, which for a small business often is going to be a deal breaker. They are quite expensive, paywalls to get started. Whereas again, we're in a region where you might need to think a little bit differently about monetization through take rates, perhaps through financing solutions and so on and so forth, as opposed to through subscriptions, which are less accepted, right? They are rather complex, whereas users here are, quite new to simply being online, right? And so you need simpler solutions to onboard them. So as a result of all of this, these large global players really do not have a large footprint in the region. So we can pretty much kind of brush those aside. Now, the second layer consists of, as you were saying, the localized sort of e-commerce enablers, right? So there are a couple, like Scaleup in Indonesia is quite a well-known one. You're going to have Tap Shop in Thailand, where we operate. You're going to have Pancake in Vietnam, right? Now, the common thread that you see across this layer of competition is that it emerged about 10 years ago, right? Now, this is a context in which you had less than a third of the population in Southeast Asia that was online. You had less than 1% of e-commerce penetration. And as a result of that, when these entrepreneurs built their businesses, they really did not have in mind the small business segment, because that small business segment was not even online, right? And as a result, they've built solutions tailored to the customers that they had at the time, which were larger businesses, medium-sized or above, in ways that are, again, subscription dependent, desktop first as opposed to mobile first, rather sophisticated and complex, and so on and so forth, right? And that's in a big way how we differentiate. Now, that third layer of competition is the one in which we exist, right? Now, these are players that are focused on the MSME segment, small businesses that are now, when the past few years have started to move online, they are selling very heavily on social media. They are less sophisticated. They need simpler solutions. They are mobile first as opposed to being desktop first. They want to start with solutions that are free, then perhaps convert to paid users, or simply pay transaction fees, or from our perspective, we monetize on kind of third parties, be it like buy now, pay later solutions, logistics players, and so on and so forth, right? So the approach is really the way in which we differentiate from these players is at the product level as well as at the business model level, which is designed so as to be able to work for a business, for a segment of users that is vastly different.
Interesting, because in Malaysia, I would consider it to be a very mature market. During the COVID-19 pandemic, and when we had the lockdown, you will see all the different kind of solutions spouting out. Whether you use mobile, whether you use desktop, the same thing as the Philippines. So I think you came in at the right time, at the right moment, where Philippines, I would say Philippines and Thailand, they are still very infant in terms of mobile adoption when it comes to this kind of e-commerce mobile solution. So well done.
Thank you. Thanks. So Malaysia is definitely an interesting market, but certainly a more developed one, right? A little bit more similar perhaps to Singapore than it is to Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and to an extent Thailand, right? So like high card penetration, for instance, rather English speaking, rather sort of more sophisticated users. So a solution like Shopify might actually fly rather well in a Malaysia or a Singapore. but does fall a little bit flat on its face when we're considering these other markets that we're talking about.
So changing a little bit gears and moving into fundraising and some of the lessons learned in your first rounds. So typically on the show, to give some context, we cover post-Series A scale-ups, but we think it's also interesting to understand that the playbooks are changing a lot, and it's good also to relearn what is happening at the pre-seed and seed level. Also, because if we don't do the things right at the pre-seed and seed level, we'll never get into A and B rounds. So it would be nice for you to kind of give us a little bit of an overview about some of the lessons that you have learned. Let's start with the pre-seed round and then evolve into the seed round. Go for it.
Yeah. So I think the thing to begin with is that I guess when people ask these questions, they want an answer that is very structured, as in if you tick boxes 1, 2, and 3, then the answer is pre-seed round, right? But the world is sadly a little bit more complex than that, right? So I don't think that there is a surefire like formula.
That you would have the
formula. No, I'm sorry to disappoint. Yeah, no, sorry to disappoint. But I think that there are some things that everyone will kind of go on about, right, and rightly so, which are the market size, which is super important, the market size and the growth, the competition, right, how you differentiate, and so on and so forth, right? So you've got all these classic elements of what makes a successful business model versus what makes a not successful business model, right? That you certainly need to be mindful of. But then it's really going to depend again on one, on you at the pre-seed level and at the seed level. The team makes a tremendous amount of difference, especially at the pre-seed level, where basically the investor is making a bet on you and a business idea, right? And so they need to be really confident that you're going to be able to deliver, right? So I would say the more credibility obviously that you have and the more experience, etc., the least you'll have to give other proof points. But if then you fall a little bit elsewhere on the spectrum, the more proof points you'll have to provide, right? And so that means for instance, providing a very, very like clear, thorough business plan, providing an MVP, showing some level of traction, and so on and so forth, right? So the more you have of that, the more you can de-risk an investment for an early stage investor, the more they will be willing to make that investment, right? And so that is going to mean that you need to rank or to score pretty highly on at least a few of the dimensions, either the business model or your own credibility or your traction, and so on and so forth. And I would say that at the pre-seed level, it skews more towards definitely less so on the traction and on the product side, and so on and so forth, and more so like on the business model and who you are as an individual. At the seed stage, it goes more into what have you been able to prove with the money that you got during this pre-seed stage, right? What product have you built? What team have you built? And so on and so forth. And certainly some product and like traction metrics. And then from the seed to the Series A, it's about proving product market fit, right? And so that's what we're working on right now, showing that, hey, we've managed to develop this playbook that we can repeat and scale to millions of users.
Let me to say that the moment when you entered into this venture, at the pre-seed level, your entire strategy is based on Thailand?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So we made the very clear decision of starting with Thailand. We knew that was going to be the first market, and once we made the decision, we stuck with it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good strategy. That probably the tipping point where you get your pre-seed and eventually your seed, because Thailand is a big market if you know how to execute it well.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, there are a few things that I guess harking back to the principles in like thinking fast and slow, right? There are some things you want to think slowly about, and some things you want to take your time. Decisions you want to take faster, right? And decisions on like which business to do. And so, yeah, you can always tweak around that general sort of direction that you decide on, right? But you're not going to do 180 degrees usually. So that decision matters a lot. the decision of which market you target matters a lot. So you definitely want to take your time to think about these things, right? And then there are other decisions that are reversible that you can be a little bit more cowboyish about. But there are a few key decisions that you do really want to make in an intentional manner.
And for the ones who are listening us, so Wilfried and Zaapi were able to raise a $500K US dollars pre-seed round with Flash Ventures last year, and some weeks ago seed rounds of 4.5 million.
So 4 million. The 4
million, 4 plus the 500. Exactly.
Exactly.
I was just looking into your LinkedIn post.
Yeah.
And with
but
now,
if I'm an investor, I will bet on him. I will bet
Appreciate
on you
that.
if I'm an investor, because number one, I see that bravado as an entrepreneur to go into a foreign market where you have really nothing on but except strategy. That's really impressive, I would say. And I'm not surprised you get to raise the kind of money. You got the market, right? You're brave enough to enter, and you have a strategy. How are you going to do this? So it gives a lot of comfort. We never find this kind of entrepreneur. You actually get out of your comfort zone, to go into a market that you can fight in, right? And you are betting on the market as well, as an entrepreneur. So fantastic. I would bet my money on you, actually. I would do that.
Appreciate it, Andrew. Well, in fact, we have quite a few angels in this round, and we could fit in a few more. So ping me after this call if you're interested.
Amazing, super well structured. And I was just saying some of the investors that back at the seed round, as you have in your LinkedIn post for the ones who want to follow you on LinkedIn. Global Founders Capital, Partech, Flourish Ventures, Kaya Founders, Iterative, Sketchnote Partners, XA Network, and I'm forgetting
1982
Ventures. Exactly. Thank you.
Correct.
Well done, Wilfried. You never forget anything. That's a lot of investors that were backing you at the seed round. So and you said that you also have business angels also supporting.
We have about 45 angels in the round as well.
Wow.
So there was a lot of legwork that went into putting this round together, but I feel super fortunate for the amount of support that we received, and amazing people like Kunal Shah from Cred in India, Sumit Shah from Dukan in India. So there were a couple of players around the world that are executing on similar business models. I've tried to go out of my way to make connections and for us to exchange insights and so on and so forth. And Sumit has been a really great partner in this, and we're more than happy to have him on the cap table. And we have a ton of investors, founders, operators in the region and beyond who are really providing invaluable support.
That's really great, and the way that you also attracted these kind of investors to support your vision and the business to move forward, right? It's super important, the investment that you did to do the fundraising right, ensuring that you have not only the capital but smart capital, as we always say.
Correct. Yeah.
So let's change gears into the team chapter. As you said, is one of the most important, and start with the typical question, and that entrepreneurs ask themselves and investors as well. Why running as a solo founder instead of with a co-founder in this venture?
Yeah. So definitely a worthy question, and I'll say that hopefully I'm able to bring a little bit of a balanced view to this question, because I have had a co-founder with my first company, and in a few failed projects in between, and now I don't, right? So I've definitely seen both sides of that picture. So I decided, I would say first, do not let the fact that you do not have a co-founder stop you in your tracks, right? If you're extremely intent about starting business and so on and so forth, that should not be a limiting factor above everything else, right? Now I do think that there are some downsides of being a sole founder, right? And looking at the journey that I had with my first venture, and now I would say that the top one really is emotional support, right? So you have the complementarity of skills, sure, but you can get that from someone that you hire in, right? But at the end of the day, what you cannot replace in a co-founder is really having someone that goes through those ups and downs with you, right? Because employees are always going to see, they're going to get their paycheck every month. They see a sort of what's in front of the curtain, which is that level of stability. When behind the curtain, it's an all-out war, right? So sometimes it's nice to have someone behind the curtain to share those struggles with you, right? So I definitely mark that out as one of the downsides. Now I'll say that I've got a life partner who is of extreme support, right? And therefore, even though she didn't necessarily sign up for this, she has been playing a lot of the role that a co-founder otherwise would be in that respect, right? So that's on the downside aspect. Now, however, I do think there are some benefits, right? And so these would come mainly in the form of speed of execution, right? So as a sole founder, you can execute much faster. And when I do compare my first venture with my current one, there's definitely less dithering. There's less, debate. There's more decisiveness. And in an environment where you need to have a bias towards action, that is definitely a big positive. Now you need to make sure that you're checking yourself, right? That when you're making an important decision, you do you use other people as sounding boards. You do be mindful about the weight of your own words, especially if you're speaking with employees, and to make sure that you're not coloring their views and you're going to get some honest opinions there. But that decisiveness of action that you get as a sole founder, I think is worth gold, right? So I wouldn't say that it's all bad. Certainly there are some big positives.
Got it. Love it. And that's a good point that you have also been working with a co-founder before.
Correct.
So you know what is the difference between the both ways of starting up a company. And at this stage now, going into the seed round, that's the moment where you start creating your initial or your first version of leadership team, maybe more ads than VPs. And by the way, what is the ad count now, just to give an idea to
right now it's a little bit over 20 of us. Yeah.
Got it. So this is kind of the moment where you start building the first structure of your leadership team. So what has been some of your insights, and what are you facing building this first version of your leadership team? Yeah.
So I think I would say that hiring is, as many people would, and people management is probably the most difficult aspect of being a founder, right? And certainly for us, it has been. And the reason is that it's because it's people. It's you can put all the frameworks and structure that you want. It's always going to remain a very, very qualitative kind of like question, right, to navigate. And so in terms of a few principles at the seed stage that we're operating by that I think are helpful, I would say, we're not hiring at the highest levels of the hierarchy, right? So as you were saying, like VPs or C-level and so on and so forth, but rather hiring, 1 or 2 levels below that and giving people some headroom to prove themselves, to keep growing. So I think that is a good principle to operate by. Now, in terms of who you should be hiring, right? What we found is that when you don't want to overstretch yourself too far, right? And go for that, VP of product at Facebook or something like that, right? One thing is going to be really difficult to compete on compensation, right? And when people get to that level, there is typically, a bit of a risk aversion that sets in, where once we've been at Facebook, say, for a couple of years, the prospect of going into an early stage startup with all the uncertainty that involves, it can be quite a daunting one, right? So there's the compensation aspect, and there's also then this kind of like risk aversion aspect, which means that it's going to end up being a bit of a frustrating journey, whereby it seems that they're really right for the role, right? And then when you start to talk about comp and you start to talk about, you give the offer, you start to talk about joining, etc., the uncertainty, typically you're going to find that there's not that great of an alignment at the seed stage, and you're probably better off keeping those people in the back of your pocket for the Series A stage, right? And that's a little bit the experience that we've had. So now where we're going at is more, hiring that sort of like, VP -1 type of person. So someone who is just underneath the level that they want to be at, right? And that show that they really have a hunger to like go up those levels, right? And prove themselves. So right now we're definitely, putting more of a bias towards hiring people with passion and with fire, who have some level of experience, right? And who certainly show very strong signs that they can, reach that next level of, in the hierarchy that you want them to reach. And that's a bet that we made, for instance, internally with our engineering lead at the pre-seed stage, who is now our VP of engineering, and a bet that has, worked out tremendously.
Got it. And by the way, until you get into seed stage, from pre-seed into the seed round, what has been the head count? Because we also see this differ a lot.
Yeah, so for us it was about 15, and now we've scaled to about 20-ish, and we'll scale further, right? But we're taking our time.
Yeah, because you just raised the seed round. Sorry about the question. So it's now that's when you are accelerating the hiring.
For sure. But the headcount, I think, is going to vary quite importantly, and it's going to depend a lot on the region, right? So if you're talking to Southeast Asian startups, I would imagine it's somewhere in the region of what I mentioned to you. If you're talking to startups in the US, right, it'll probably be just five or six people.
5 or 6, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a great point. So I would have much more questions, and I'm sure that Andrew as well, but time flies, unfortunately, on the show. But that's also a good excuse to have you back in further episodes to share your lessons.
We'll be happy to.
As you scale your company. So let's go into the segment that we have quick questions and answers to wrap up the show. So if you would have an opportunity to have a coffee with yourself at the beginning of Zaapi, what advice would you offer to your younger self? By the way, when was the beginning? Really?
A year ago now.
A year ago.
Yeah.
Okay. 1 year ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say to yourself?
Yeah. So I think, am I allowed to tweak the question to my younger self in general? Not necessarily just a year ago.
Of course.
All right. Yes. So kind of let me tweak it to that. I would say, if you want to start a venture backable business, and this ties into some of the advice that I just gave, right? Make sure that, again, you're committing to the right business model. When you commit to a certain business, it's a multi-year journey and affair. It's a very hard commitment, right? And so make sure that whatever business it is that you are starting, you make sure that this is really what you want to be getting into, right? So, I started my first business really a little bit, I don't want to say accidentally, but really because I was bored, and I wanted to start something, and it turned out to be a brand that grew and that did quite well. But it also turned out to not be a venture backable business, right? And that's something that we realized a little bit with time, that after trying to raise about $1 million for that brand, we managed to put together about half of the money. But ultimately, we were just not in the right place at the right time with the right business model. And so those factors just didn't come together to make it work, right? And so if you're pushing at something with, a business model, business idea that is just not a fit for what it is you're looking to achieve, you're going to make your life extremely hard, right? And so my advice would be, make sure that what it is you decide to pursue is in alignment with what it is that you're aiming to achieve.
Life-changing, this one, especially for the ones who are first-time founders. This is what you are saying is really life-changing, and it really resonated with me also, and it's very aligned with what Benoit from Payflow has said about it. So what are you the most proud of so far on your journey as an entrepreneur?
A couple things, I guess. I'll maybe mark out two things. The first one, with my first company, we built a really powerful brand. It was a project born out of partly boredom, but partly a big part of passion, right? And so that's why I ended up not being everything that we wanted it to be in terms of ticking those boxes for like a venture backable business. But it's certainly been a passion project, and that has attracted a lot of people, right? So we've been covered in the New York Times and GQ and the biggest watch publications in the world. and we have managed to create something that really has a bit of a cult following. So I'm quite proud of how I managed to do that. And it remains a an interesting, really interesting journey to be a part of. And with Zaapi, I would say that beyond the achievements in terms of the business, how many merchants we're serving today, etc. I would say I'm extremely proud of our team. We've managed to put together an extremely strong team that just has a great rapport, great team vibe going on, and yeah, so happy to work with them day in, day out. So to me, again, I was mentioning hiring people management is the hardest challenge, but I think that we've done really well on that, and I'm really proud of the team that we have here at Zaapi.
Worst advice I ever received?
Worst advice I ever received? Sorry, maybe you can cut out this segment. Well, worst advice I received. Okay, so I think that I don't know if it's the worst advice I ever received, but maybe one thing to that people will want to be mindful of when you start going to people for advice, be it investors or like fellow entrepreneurs, etc. Opinions are a dime a dozen, right? So we have heard so many times from people who are otherwise quote unquote credible, absolutely diametrically conflicting opinions, right? And so you do want to take opinions with a grain of salt, right? And certainly have your vision of what is right in mind, and augment that with the opinions of others. But definitely don't take everything that is mentioned to you, especially from people, voices of authority, as gospel, because soon you'll realize that a lot of people are giving a lot of opinions, and if you start mapping those together, they don't always make sense.
Absolutely, super powerful one. Favorite book, business one or not?
Yeah, favorite book. One that comes to mind is maybe a book that wouldn't otherwise be recommended on your podcast, but Tim Clissold's Mr. China. So Tim Clissold is a British person who lived in China right at the beginning of the Reform and Opening era, right, and took part in essentially the journey of investment of one of the first and largest American investors into private enterprise in China. It's a great book that's extremely readable, very entertaining. I do recommend anyone who has an interest in that period of China's history, which is really interesting, to have a look at it. Very
original recommendation. Thank you. Favorite movie or series?
Favorite movie or series? Been watching Snowpiercer lately, the series, and I don't know what that says about my mindset because it's quite dark, but it's definitely entertaining.
No, this is a personal part. And of course, we are introducing a new one, which is your favorite podcast, excluding Scaleup Valley, to not put you in difficult waters.
Yeah. So I'll say, probably the one that I listen to the most is the 20VC. Love Harry Stebbings, love all the guests that come on the show. So strong recommend.
It's a great one. I really recommend it too. Andrew, any final remarks before we go and we say thank you to Wilfried?
No final remark, but I'm very impressed with this young man here. I look forward to see you becoming a unicorn in Southeast Asia soon.
Appreciate it. We're going to do everything that we can to make that happen. Thanks, Andrew. Okay. Cheers, Mike.
What a great endorsement to end. Wilfried, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really a pleasure to host you, and you are always welcome to come back to the show.
Appreciate it. Likewise, great to be with you guys on the show, and appreciate you having me.
To the community, we keep bringing you the best of the best to make your life easier, scaling up your company. See you soon, and keep scaling.